Why? Why on God's green earth doesn't he have a better job? As Christian was thinking that, the ragman looked at a woman. She was sobbing uncontrollably into a handkerchief. The ragman said, gently, very gently, "Give me your rag, and I will give you mine." The ragman wiped from her eyes one last tear. Then he took the soiled handkerchief, excuse me, and gave her a new one. It was so clean, it shone. The ragman then touched the old, stained handkerchief of the woman. He touched it to his eyes. Immediately, the ragman sobbed, just as she had. The woman, though, she was now smiling. Christian was bewildered. Like a child who can't turn away from a mystery, he followed the sobbing ragman. Rags, rags, new rags for old. A few blocks later, the ragman came upon a little girl. Her scalp was fully bandaged. Blood trickled down one of her cheeks. The ragman hugged the child with his eyes. His eyes glistened with love. From his cart, the ragman took a bright yellow bonnet. He caressed the girl's cheek and said, "Give me your rags, and I'll give you mine." The child's response was hardly noticeable. Her eyes were almost totally vacant. The ragman loosened the girl's bandage. He removed it, and he put on her head the beautiful yellow bonnet. On his head, the ragman put the girl's soiled bandage. Christian shook in disbelief. The girl's wound went with her bandage. Dark blood now gushed down the ragman's cheek. "Rags, rags, I take old rags. I take your rags," cried the sobbing, now bleeding ragman. The ragman then noticed a young man leaning against the telephone pole. The ragman asked, "Waiting to go to work?" With contempt on his face, the young man shook his head no. The ragman pressed him. "Do you have a job? Are you blind?" The young man sneered. He pulled away from the pole, revealing the right sleeve of his jacket. The sleeve was flat, the cuff tucked into his pocket. The young man had no right arm. The ragman was deeply moved. With great tenderness, he said, "Give me your jacket, and I will give you mine." The men exchanged jackets. Christian trembled. The ragman's arm stayed in his jacket sleeve. And when the young man put on the ragman's jacket, the young man had two good arms. The ragman had only one. "Now," said the ragman, "go find work. You're restored." The young man thanked the ragman as he walked away with pride and purpose. Rags, rags. I take the world's rags. The ragman then found a drunk. He was unconscious in a fetal position beneath a tattered army blanket. The drunk was in his 80s. He was hunched, wizened, and too sick to talk. The ragman gave the old man his clothes. He wrapped himself in the old man's blanket. The old man danced with resurrecting health. The ragman stumbled from drunkenness. He wept uncontrollably, bled from his head, and he pulled his cart with his one arm. With an old, raspy voice, the ragman cried, "Rags, rags, I take your hurts and make them mine." The ragman was old, exhausted, and sick. The ragman fell 3 times, but finally he came to a landfill. He climbed a hill of garbage. The ragman cleared a space at the top, lay down, and covered his skin and bones with his old army blanket. He prayed, sighed, and died. Christian was devastated. He cried himself to sleep. Christian slept not only Friday night, but all day Saturday as well. He was awakened Sunday morning by a pure, hard light. Christian saw the ragman surrounded by the light, folding his blanket. There was a scar on his forehead, but he was alive. There was no sign of physical infirmity or old age. And his old rags were now clean, bright, and new. Christian approached the ragman, stripped, and said, "Dress me, make me new again." The ragman exchanged clothes with Christian, and in every fiber of his being, Christian felt reborn, resurrected. With pure joy, Christian screamed, "The ragman, the ragman, the Christ!" Easter is the good news that the ragman, the Son of God, has saved us by giving us his life. So on this Easter, let's reflect on what Easter means to us. Easter means we're called to be like the ragman. We're called to give up our lives for others, to help people whose spirits are crushed, whose bodies are broken. We're called to be Christ to old women, little girls, young men, old drunks, everyone who needs us. Because of Easter, we're forgiven. Heaven is ours. But there's a catch, a calling. We might feel called to win the Powerball, but good stewards know Easter calls us to be ragmen.